Hi, everybody. This is Ethan Rosenzweig. I am the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid here at Emory Law. Thank you so much for logging in. This is our first ever national webinar where I'm going to give you a little insight and behind the scenes on what we look for at Emory in an application and some tips on how to improve your application and maximize the financial awards that you can receive. Now, this will be about an hour program. We're going to go through a few different modules of the different parts of the application. There is a question button on the left of your screen. It's a green button. And if you have any questions during the presentation, just click it. One of our staff members here will make sure to get you an answer. And if they can't get you an answer, they will try and get your email address to follow up with you after the presentation. Now, also, after this presentation, we're going to have a live interactive chat where you can talk to our admission fellows, our senior administrators here at Emory in the admission office, and get some more of your personal answers addressed as well. Again, this is one of our first times we've used this, so if things are not working on your computer, simply send us a question and we will try to help troubleshoot with you as well. All right, let's get started. We look at 5 different areas of an application when we're determining who should be admitted to Emory Law. Your LSAT and GPA, your personal statement, letters of recommendation, your resume, and connectivity with Emory, or your desire to attend Emory. We weight these different factors in various ways. There's no formula. So a very strong personal statement could override an area that you want to improve at in a different part of the application. So again, there's no formula. We look at everything. So a lot of times, let's go to the LSAT and GPA, the first criteria that we look at. A lot of times folks get very concerned. They say, oh, I don't have the medians that you publish on the ABA website and in U.S. News and World Report, so I don't want to apply. And we're like, no, please, if you want to apply, you should. Last year, our medians for our incoming class were a 165 and a 375 undergraduate GPA as calculated by LSAC. So a 165 is about the 91st to 93rd percentile of all LSAT test takers, and a 375 is about an A-minus GPA at most schools. However, last year we also took students from a 150 LSAT all the way to a 180, and we took students well below a 3.0 GPA. So do not allow your personal scores or GPA to prohibit you from applying. If there is a lot of desire to be with us, we want to know that because there are lots of different factors we look at. We look at your highest score. So you could take the test 5 or 6 times. We're going to look at your highest score no matter what. So you say, Ethan, I got a 155 the first time I took it, and then I got a 165 the second. Great. We're going to look at your highest score. Or then you say, oh, I got a 164 the first time, and then the second time I got a 150. I think that's bad. No, we're going to still look at your highest score. Or you may say, I've taken it 5 times, and it's gone up and down and up and down. Doesn't matter. We're going to look at your highest score no matter what. So do not worry about submitting an addendum about us looking at your highest score. Also, we get addendums that talk about when you're taking the test and the band is playing outside, or you're sitting next to that person that's sniffing and sneezing, or the test proctor only gave you 30 minutes instead of 35 minutes. If you've addressed those issues with LSAC, we're going to get a statement automatically. So there's no reason for you to have to rehash all of that in an addendum. Addendums are rarely appropriate for LSAT. We do look at addendums for GPA. Perhaps you started off as a science major, and then your sophomore year you decided you were more apt to be a music major, and so your GPA improved because of that. Well, we want to know that, so you'll tell us that. Or maybe you had a horrific experience one semester and you had to take some time off. We'll want to know that as well. So an addendum there might be appropriate. So if you have any questions on LSAT or GPA and how we look at it, simply ask your questions now or wait for the chat. Someone's standing by to make sure you get a great answer that you're looking for. And we're going to move on to the second factor that we look at, and one that I'm quite biased towards, which is the personal statement, my favorite part of the application. Now, this section is going to, I'm going to really delve into this, so it's going to take a few minutes, so I want to make sure you've got your pencils out, you're ready to take some notes or type them with me. The essay we look at should be approximately 2 pages double-spaced. I will read maybe 100 essays over a weekend. So I want to be able to read it easily. I don't want to have to look at it because it's such small font. So we ask that you make sure it's double-spaced, it has normal margins, the font is realistic. We don't have specific guidelines. We trust your judgment. The essay, the personal statement, is critical. So lawyers are writers, and we want to know how your writing skill matches up with our expectations. So please take as much time as you need to prepare this personal statement, have other people proof it. It is not something that you should write overnight. We usually know if you've written it pretty quickly. A great personal statement has an attention-getting opener. Boom! You hit me over the head and you say, here is why I want you to know more about me. Let me read you one of my favorite openings from last year's essays. All right, here we go. A $3.52 reimbursement check. This was the result of my first successful fought case at the age of 9. The premise was false advertising. After shampooing my hair and trying to style it to look like Madonna, I soon realized my efforts were going to be fruitless. It was at this point I called customer service and complained. After stating the facts, victory came in the words of, "We will reimburse you for the amount you paid for the shampoo." While seemingly trivial, this may in retrospect have been the first step on my journey to pursue law. I like that. It had a nice opening about the student always wanting to be an advocate and a cute little vignette to kind of catch our attention. We tell people at Emory that if we read your essay out loud, the entire essay, it would take us about 10 minutes. A lot of folks say, oh, I really wish you could interview me because I just want to have a chance to tell you about me, to tell you about me and why I want to attend Emory. That's what your essay is for. If I took you to Starbucks and said, tell me about yourself, why is Emory the right fit for you? And I gave you 10 minutes, you'd give me a lot of great information, we'd be excited, and I'd have a lot of information to go by to add to your application. That is what the essay is supposed to do. Think of it as your 10 minutes in Starbucks with me and why Emory is the right fit. Now let me talk to you about some essays we get every year that probably aren't on the right track. The first one is what we call the resume essay. This is the essay that simply restates your resume in 2 pages. In September of my sophomore year, I decided to join the band because I had always been interested in the flute, and the band was a lot of fun. And then junior year, I organized an activity with the Student Government Association, and it was very successful. So we read this essay, and we're like, okay, we know the student's very involved in activities. And then we flip and we see your resume and it tells us the exact same things. So I sit there and I cringe because you've just wasted some important space to tell us more about yourself. So if you're going to write about an activity from your resume, your essay should really delve into that activity and why it's important to you and it's relevant to your goals to go to law school. So again, if you're going to do the resume essay, make sure you're giving us more than what's actually on your resume. The inappropriate humor. Humor's tough. I like humor. I like folks that are funny. Sarcasm can be dangerous, but if you hit it right, it definitely makes you memorable. But usually it's hard to convey humor in an essay without context. I'll give you an example of one where I don't think it came across the right way. All right, here we go. Unlike the other essays that you may read, I didn't study in Costa Rica to save the whales, Nor did I spend my summers distributing contraceptives in Africa. Nope, I suppose I am not as accomplished as my colleagues. And the student puts colleagues in quotes. I know what the student was trying to do here, what the applicant was trying to do. They were trying to say, I didn't have some of the experiences as the other applicants, but I still have a lot of qualifying credentials to make me an attractive Emory student. Well, you can do that without ridiculing or demeaning other people in the community. So again, just be very, very careful with humor. And if you're going to use it, make sure it's appropriate and have other people read it and see if they chuckle and find if it's appropriate as well. All right, another essay, which I strongly urge you to consider not doing, is the cut and paste essay. This is where you take a piece of information from our website and you place it in your essay. I'll read you one from last year. Emory is the right fit for me because of the access to all the resources of Atlanta, one of the nation's fastest growing metropolitan areas. Okay, well, that's true about Atlanta, and I'm glad you know that. What's interesting is I remember that sentence because I wrote it, and I'm one of the people that helped write the website. So I'm glad you like that statement, but perhaps you should spend the 2 pages writing original thought. So be very careful on the cut and paste essay. The What I Did This Summer essay. We'll get a lot of fun essays which will talk about an activity you did over the summer, whether it's in college or post-college. Sometimes it concerns being a server at Fridays or the Outback, which we enjoy reading because we like those restaurants. So we'll read the essay and we'll talk about how hard it is and how much you learned, but it never tells us why that's relevant to your pursuit of going to law school, or specifically Emory Law. So if you're going to write about an activity from last summer, make sure there is connectivity to how it relates to your law school application. I know you think at home, oh, this is straightforward, I get it. And I'm glad you do. I just want to make sure you're aware that we get hundreds of these essays every year. And I always cringe because it doesn't put you in the best light. Now, I want to talk about one of my favorite essays. I'm going to read you a part of that, so you have an idea of something that popped out to us. We get about 4,000 essays a year, and last year we only really pulled about 4 or 5 of those essays. So what that tells you is there's a lot of room to really shine on the personal statement. If I'm only finding 4 or 5 that I truly found memorable, there's a lot of room to be one of those people. There's a lot more space in that bucket. All right, let me read this for you. The middle of 3 brothers, I spent a lot of time alone. I read countless books, tried a bit of writing, and gradually came to the conclusion held by solitary people that I was a genius surrounded by idiots. I clung to this delusion for years and spent much of my childhood in that wonderful state of narcissistic repose, dreaming about the inevitable day when I would become president, or more desirably, a Willy Wonka-like board game creator. I had already invented a hybrid chess game that would certainly make me famous. All right, great beginning. It got my attention. The student has some self-deprecating humor about how he thinks he is the best person around and has invented some Willy Wonka-type games, something we don't read about everybody. So I want to read more about the student. The student has convinced me to stay a little bit and learn more about him. So the essay continues. Now I am 24 years old. I have lived a bit more, failed some, dated a girl, and I can describe myself more realistically than I could back then. Among the things I have learned is that I'm smart but not a genius. I'm a good writer but I can do better, and I'm not original. Indeed, according to Google, I'm not even the most impressive Jason Goldberg in the world. That honor belongs to Dr. Jason Goldberg, president of a large company and possessor of a Harvard PhD. So the student's telling us about his journey in life, his growth, his maturity, the fact that the student's open to learning more about himself. But I'm still trying to figure out why law school, and the student addresses this for me in the last paragraph. This brings me to why I want to go to law school. I have grown enough as a person to know that there is no perfect life awaiting me around the corner. But I do think that a degree from Emory Law will give me the credentials skills, and flexibility to achieve the type of challenging and meaningful professional life that I have always desired. So what the student's telling me here is, look, I don't know exactly what my path is going to be in law school, but I do know what the basic law school skills will provide me, which is critical thinking, advocacy skills, writing skills. And the student talks about how they want to be at Emory so they can explore how those skills can lead them to a specific legal career. A lot of you are thinking, well, they didn't talk about Emory programs specifically, and they didn't say how Emory itself could help them. Well, I know that most students are applying to 10 to 15 schools. And I know if you're applying to schools like Emory, which is a top school in the country, we have lots of great programs that you need to explore yourself. So as long as you can relate to us that you're ready to start a legal journey and what that means, the critical thinking skills, the writing, etc., then we are convinced that you'll be a good fit here because we'll give you all those tools and then more detail along the way. Now, I know I gave you a lot of information about essays. Again, it's one of our favorite parts of the application. It brings out your personality. If you have more questions, please make sure to ask those questions through our Q&A button, or we'll be on the live chat at the end of this as well. I do want to bring up diversity statements and other addendum as well. We have a question at the end of our application that states, if there's something we haven't asked you, now is the time to tell us. That would be the time to address any other issues that we haven't asked in your application. Diversity statements are great. The strongest diversity statements are the ones that tell us why diversity matters to you and how it's going to impact our community. We value diversity. Emory was one of the first schools in the nation to admit a diverse, racially diverse class in this country. However, our diversity statement should be more about who you are. It should be why that impacts your pursuit for law. Again, if you have any questions, make sure to let us know, and we're going to move on to the third factor of the application process, which is letters of recommendation. We love letters of recommendation because they can help you. It's rare they can hurt you, but how can they truly set you apart? We are looking for letters of recommendation that champion your application. Not just recommend you, but truly tell us why you are so unique and how you're going to make an impact here. We're looking for 2 and only 2 letters of recommendation, unless you're applying for our Woodruff Fellowship, which requires an additional letter, which we'll talk about shortly. But again, normally 2 letters of recommendation submitted through LSAC, one of which we strongly prefer, if not require, that it be from an academic professor. Why? Because you're applying to be a professional student. So we want to know how you performed in the classroom and what kind of impact you made beyond your grades. So make sure that your letters have at least 1 academic. I always recommend that you try to keep a copy. Why? I know that LSAC and some professors ask you to waive your right to the letter. However, if I wrote a letter for you that championed you and talked about how great you are, I want you to have that letter as a souvenir, as something, as my appreciation to you, as something for you to keep so you know what an impact you had on us. So if a professor is hesitant to let you keep the letter, I would be a little worried because maybe it's not one that champions you, it simply recommends you. Let me read you one that I thought really summed up a student's application, truly showed what championing means. This is from a professor. I'll read you one sentence. In over 30 years of recommending students for graduate study, Lizzie Robinson is possibly the best I've ever sent to a law school. That's all we needed to know. This is a 30-year tenured professor who wrote a very substantive and long letter of recommendation that told us the student was the best in 30 years. That student didn't have the strongest LSAT, didn't have everything that students think you need to get into law school, but it had that letter. She had that letter, and that brought her over the top. Now, there are some letters which sometimes I'm always questioning why the student asked the professor for the letter. So again, if you're asking a professor, if they won't give you a copy, it should still be from a professor that you know is going to champion you the entire way. I'll read you this letter. One sentence from it. In conclusion, while I cannot recommend Joe to one of the top 10 law schools in the United States, I believe he will do quite well at Emory. Okay, well, first of all, we consider ourselves a top school in the United States. We're ranked in the top 20. But besides that, it seemed very cynical to us for a professor to be so sarcastic in a letter of recommendation. What it told us was that maybe this student didn't have the best relationship, so why was this student making a judgment call to go to this professor? It kind of questioned his judgment to us. So be careful. Make sure it's professors that are going to champion you. Now, as an aside, when we see those letters, we want to give you every benefit. So we'll usually call you and ask you for another letter of recommendation. But be careful, because still, we always question why a student would ask someone to write a letter who's not going to champion them. My favorite letter was never from a professor. It was not from a professor. So this goes to the fact that we only want one from a professor. Two is great, but one is required. The second letter can be from anybody. It can be from an internship coordinator, college counselor, summer project. This letter came from the manager at the Olive Garden. Now, I love the Olive Garden. I like their $9.99 pasta bowl. I like the breadsticks. So when we saw this letter, we're like, this is interesting. We don't get letters from the Olive Garden every time. And who would have thought it would have been the strongest one? Because managers don't write letters to law schools from the Olive Garden every day. I'll read you part of this letter to kind of give you the texture of how this letter championed the student. In her time working at the Olive Garden, I awarded her the honor of Maestro de Servicio, or Master of Service, due to an overwhelming pride and honor in her work ethic, customer service, and ability to lead the host team. She had the capability to analyze any potentially problematic situation in respect to both customers and coworkers and find a diplomatic solution that appealed to all. Wow. In that one paragraph, this manager just told us all about this fantastic leadership skills the student had, as well as her analytical abilities to solve problems. In conclusion, this student is an outstanding young woman who has a great interest in studying law. She has demonstrated the character and work ethic that I am confident will lead her to success in studies, and I would be proud for her to advocate me on any day. She would be a shining star in your incoming class of law students. That's all we needed to hear. The student was an automatic admit. We actually wrote the CEO of Olive Garden to let them know how powerful this manager was in articulating why this student should be accepted. So again, I hope that shows you that letters of recommendation can truly get you into law school, especially here at Emory, and how we're looking for them to champion your application. If you have any questions about letters of recommendation, please feel free to hit the Q&A button or save your questions for the chat. I want to move to the fourth part of the application process, which is leadership and community impact, or your resume. Make sure your resume correlates with your application. What does that mean? It means that in your application, you talk all about studying abroad and how that impacted you, but you never mention it on your resume. So then we're like, if it was so important, why isn't it there? Make sure you tell the truth. All right, I'll give you a great example on this. We had a student who, on his resume, talked about being a national breakdancing champion. You remember breakdancing from the 80s and 90s? So we were excited. We were like, oh, we want to check out this student. So we went on YouTube to see the student's breakdancing moves. And that's where we found out that the student really wasn't a national champion, but simply liked to attend and watch competitions. And that would have been okay, because how many times does a breakdancer apply to law school? It was the fact that the student said they were a national champion, that he was a national champion, that gave us pause, because it wasn't true. Now, we don't go on YouTube or Facebook or Google. We don't really have the time, nor is that our business to really go behind you and see what you're doing. But if you tell us something pretty cool, human nature is we want to know more. So just be careful that you're telling the truth on your resume. And remember, you're going to be an Emory lawyer for life. We're looking for interesting people. What I tell people that review files in our admission committee is that we're looking to admit 200 plus students who are interesting to go to lunch with. Because if you go to class with 200 people who are fascinating to have lunch with, it's going to be a very dynamic community. That is what your resume should communicate to us, is what makes you interesting. What's important to you? Resume should be about one page. Why one page? Because the one-page resume gives us a chance for you to gives you a chance to prioritize what defines who you are. Now, if it really needs to be 2 pages, it can. But I ask you, is being a shelver at the college library for a work-study position something that is relevant to you? It may be. But if it isn't, I don't know if it needs to be on the resume. So again, one-page resume, and we're looking for reasons that make you so interesting and make an impact here at Emory. If you have any questions, please, please, please make sure that you email those to us or through the Q&A button, or get ready for the chat. The last part of the application process that we look at, and what really impacts your scholarship, is what we call Emory connectivity. We use this phrase, you're going to be an Emory lawyer for life. What does that mean? It means that you don't just come to Emory for 3 years and call it a day. For your entire legal career, the banner above you, your diploma, Emory, defines you to clients, to the community, to the legal bar as a whole. And we're looking for people who are going to hold the Emory Law banner high for their entire career, because you're part of us. And that's a very, very strong badge to wear. So when we're looking for scholarships, and we're looking to award scholarships, we're looking for people who are going to represent Emory well for the rest of their career. And we look at certain things. The first factor we look at when awarding scholarships is your overall file review. Did your essay match up to your resume, and was it consistent with your letters of recommendation? Was it one tight package that was wrapped in a bow? I'll give you a great example of this. We had an applicant who had worked at Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A had had some controversy in the news, and the student had won a scholarship from Chick-fil-A and talked about in their application how the scholarship helped the student get to college, how the student was concerned about some of the news about Chick-fil-A, how the student addressed that. And then we got a letter of recommendation from Chick-fil-A that talked about how this student successfully showed them why she was such a leader and how involved she was with them. It all put it together for us in one package on why this student truly was a leader. Throughout the application, all we saw was this student's a leader, and it all matched up. The student's academic credentials were high. They were at our medians. The student's essay, as I said, matched up to their resume and their recommendations. And the student's community impact was second to none. The student had enough leadership positions and enough involvement to tell us that they were going to make an impact here at Emory also. So this student got one of the higher scholarships we offer. We offer scholarships from $5,000 a year all the way up to full scholarships. So the stronger your file review, the higher your scholarship will be. We also offer 4 full scholarships, and those are through a special process called the Woodruff Fellowship Program. To apply for this, we must have your application and an additional letter of recommendation submitted to us by January 26th. That's a week from today. Or, excuse me, about a week from today. To learn more, simply go to the website law.emory.edu/Woodruff to learn more about this. Our Woodruff Fellows are superstars here, and I hope that you'll consider applying and carrying on the values of the Woodruff Foundation. We have an early decision program. Now, that's different than our accelerated JD program. So let me be clear. You're going to see this on the application. Accelerated JD are for foreign students who have already received what's called an LLB from another university. An early decision is for students applying straight from college, or not even straight from college, applying to our 3-year traditional JD program, but who know that Emory, it's its first choice. So if you apply, we're going to give you a decision within 14 days of your application being received and completed. It's kind of like a Disney Fast Pass. You'll go to the front of the line, and you'll be one of the first applications we review that day. We'll give you a decision within 14 days, and if you're accepted, you're guaranteed a minimum $48,000 scholarship over 3 years. Again, you should only apply if this is your first choice, and if financial aid is not your determinative point of decision, because it's a binding program, meaning if we accept you, you have to withdraw your applications from other areas, from other law schools. So early decision is a binding program. You can only apply to one early decision. And if you get in, you're bound to come to Emory this fall, and we will in return give you a minimum of $48,000 scholarship, and we'll let you know within 14 days. I do hope you'll apply. About 10% of our classes through the early decision program. We still have a limited number of seats left. We've admitted most of our students so far through that program. But if you are truly interested in Emory, I urge you to apply early decision. Quickly, I want to talk about Emory, and I want to talk about why Emory is a good fit for so many students who are looking at top universities. Number one is our Career Center is staffed by over a dozen people who truly are committed to ensuring that you have the job that fits you. Not just any legal job, but a job that fits so that when you graduate, you are excited to hit the ground running. Over half of our students come to Emory not knowing what area of law they want to practice. That's good. We like that because we're going to spend a lot of time getting to know you and having you work with us to develop the path that you may be interested in, whether it's litigation or criminal law or property law or intellectual property law. We're going to work with you to find out where your gifts lie. We also know that a lot of people need help along the way with just professional development. Everything from what is it like to go to a formal business dinner, or how do I interact at a networking reception? So every year we bring a White House chef, a former White House chef, to Emory, and we all get dressed up, and we all go to a fancy ballroom where we learn about interviewing over a dinner meal. And what happens when you spill soup? When that happens to me a lot, so I'm always need a little refresher. And how you hold yourself at a cocktail reception. You can see pictures there from the last one that we had. Emory prides itself on leveraging the experiences that you can receive here in Atlanta and throughout the country while you're working in law school. What does that mean, combining theory and practice? What it means is that not only are you going to learn how to write a contract, but then you're going to be able to work at Coca-Cola, UPS, Delta, Porsche USA, all housed here in Atlanta while you're in law school. So that when you graduate, you can tell employers, oh, I've worked at the big companies. I know what it's like to be a lawyer. Or if you're interested in government or public service, you'll work at the State House or at the Defenders Clinic or at international relief organizations like CARE and the Carter Center, all based here. You cannot graduate from Emory without having the hands-on experience that you get from being in a large city like Atlanta. Every student at Emory, whether you want to be a dirt lawyer, which is a property lawyer, or a big-time litigator, every student's going to complete a 2-week trial boot camp where we'll bring in mock jurors and we'll bring in actors to be witnesses and we'll bring in child actors who are child witnesses and they're made to trip you up on the stand. And you'll conduct a criminal trial and a civil trial so that when you graduate, you can tell employers, I know how to do this. If you're interested in business law, we have a 2-year curriculum as part of the 3-year JD. Well, you'll learn from some of the top corporate leaders, like I said, at Delta, Home Depot, UPS, Coca-Cola, on how to make a deal, how to close a deal, how to negotiate a deal, how to make a bad contract better. IP law is one of our strongest strengths here at Emory, so if you're interested in copyright, trademark, or patent, we'll pair you up with Emory MBA students and Georgia Tech engineers, and you'll work with the Georgia Tech engineers' invention and help bring that to market through our Tiger program. Our professors here are not just great researchers who sit in front of a computer all day and type out journal articles and scholarly reports, but they're dynamic teachers. They love to be in the classroom. That is their home. And they want you to be excited every day for why you're here. But most importantly for us, it's the community. And that's what we're looking for in the application. Is that, are you someone who's going to make an impact on day one? We want you to do everything you did in undergrad and post-undergrad. We want you to do that and more here at Emory. So if you're one of those people who we're going to know you from the day you get here to the day you cross the stage and get that diploma, then this is the community we hope you'll join. I appreciate your attention. I know it can be difficult sometimes going through a webinar, and I'm so glad you joined us. Again, if you have questions, we're going to have a chat in a few minutes. If there are things you want to address later, you can always email us, and that email address is at jdadmission. Again, it's jdadmission, all one word, at emory.edu. Again, I'm Ethan Rosenzweig. I hope to see you this fall. Thanks so much for attending, and welcome to Emory. I hope to see you at the chat in a few minutes.